Dear brothers, dear sisters, dear friends, yesterday morning at the Divine Liturgy, we had a great veneration of the Gospel book with incense, and the fire alarm went off. It was similar to the alarms that go off in Ukraine daily, sometimes a few times a day, as air raid warnings. And eerily, that alarm went off yesterday at the very same time that 96 cruise missiles were launched at Ukraine and 10 kamikaze drones. I'm here today to thank you, all the people you represent, and all Americans for the incredible solidarity in prayer, in information, and in aid that you are offering. His Beatitude Sviatoslav, the bishops of both the Eastern and Western Catholic churches in the U.S., the Orthodox, the priests, the faithful, the volunteers, the medical staff, the soldiers, they thank you for Catholic solidarity and for American solidarity. This morning I talked to the leadership of the Ukrainian Catholic University just before our session. Imagine knowing that close to 100 cruise missiles are going at your cities. Yesterday was a 9/11 day. There have been many 9/11 days. All of us are old enough to remember what that day was like, 9/11. And yet, the report was nobody panicked. People were bewildered a little bit because the lights are out. 7 million families last night had no electricity. The temperatures tonight will be below zero. The weather is like in Chicago or Minnesota. But Natalia Klimowska, the vice rector, one of the vice rectors of the university, said, better without electricity, but with Kherson. And it's going to be with Crimea, it's going to be with Donbass. As the president of Ukraine told the G20, or the G19, as he called them, tweaking his nose, he said that we want peace. We want peace in all of Ukraine. Allow me to remind you that Ukraine was the first country, along with Belarus and Kazakhstan, and it hasn't been repeated afterward, to give up its nuclear arsenal. It had more nukes than France, Britain, and China put together. Unfortunately, even peacemakers today forget and don't appreciate this. I told Pope Francis on August 26th, when I had 90 minutes with him, I said, Holy Father, Ukraine was like a lamb. Ukraine reduced its army from 900,000 to 150 on paper, of which only 15,000 were battle ready. It was not interested in war and aggression. It wants nothing from Russia, nothing of Russia. It just wants peace. This is what Ukraine looks like. This is in Bucha, a town that I never knew of until February and April. Today, everybody knows it. Who's doing the slides? Next, please. The infrastructure of the country is being damaged, destroyed. 40% of the electrical grid has been hit. Next. There are millions of windows destroyed. This is how much of over 120,000 houses destroyed. Apartment buildings. Some cities are destroyed 70%. The city of Mariupol I think the Blessed Mother is still going to react to this. This city, which was the most Russian-speaking city of Ukraine, was destroyed to protect Russian speakers. And who is being killed most of all? Disproportionately, members of the Moscow Patriarchate, because they're in the eastern part of the country. That is how Putin is defending orthodoxy and how he's defending Russian speakers. Next. Over 1,000 hospitals. Think about it. We know what hospital equipment costs. We know what hospitals do. And they are being hit, damaged, and destroyed. You see throughout the country. Next. 3,000 schools damaged or destroyed. All of us have a parochial school system. We know how much effort it is to put together a school. What is a school, that beautiful community of teachers and children? 3,000 of them hit. Next. The land is being contaminated. 23% of the agriculture is knocked out, which means hunger in North Africa, lack of food in Lebanon and throughout the Middle East. People, the world took for granted the breadbasket of Europe, not realizing that the food goes far beyond the European continent. Millions of windows are broken. Being careful for your own health, I want to ask you to leave a window open for a few hours in one of your rooms and try to sit in it now in November. And imagine what it's like for millions of windows to be broken and to have the main glass factory of the country destroyed. Next. The GDP will be knocked down 35%. 60% of the population will be below the national poverty line by the end of the year, as compared to 18% a year ago. The reconstruction, no one knows, but already it will need $350 billion. That is Ukraine, and that is the Russian Empire. And this is an image of the problem. Russia is the last of the European empires, and scandalously, it is the last to use the gospel, the church, to justify colonialism. Russia is 28 times as big as Ukraine. Do you need that 28th part? Is not 11 time zones enough? This is the profound pathology of imperialism. There are 193 ethnic groups, according to Wikipedia, in Russia. Pope Francis made a pilgrimage of penitence to Canada, and he called it a cultural genocide. How in the 21st century can the world tolerate this kind of imperialism? Today, Ukrainians are saying America will never be a colony of Great Britain. Algeria is not going to be a colony of France. Peru, Argentina, Chile, colonies of Spain. Blacks are never going to be slaves of whites. And today, Ukrainians are saying it's over. We're not going to be colonized. We're not going to be subject. It's over. It's liberty or death. Today, the leadership of the Ukrainian Catholic University was laughing. People are singing. They're like the youths in that furnace in Babylon. They trust in life. They trust in truth. They trust in dignity, in solidarity, in subsidiarity, and in the common good. As you know, 14 million people have been forced from their homes. 14 million people. And I want to ask you, along with Bishop Mario Dorsonville, we're asking that all dioceses, all bishops consider hosting one family. You can only get into the U.S. on humanitarian parole if there's sponsorship. So far, there have been, I think, 150,000 people that have come into the U.S., half of them on humanitarian parole. But look at the European reception. Poland and Germany right now have over 1 million people. France has 200,000, as does Great Britain. Italy has probably 300,000. All these countries have been tremendously generous, and particularly in a special way, the Catholic Church itself has been generous, and it has formed the societies to be generous. We saw how Poland received 4 million refugees, and nobody was in refugee camps. They were in homes, they were in schools, they were in institutions, in convents, in monasteries. Next. This is the reception of people in the United States. You can see the regions where people are focusing. Usually it's because they have friends or family who are sponsoring them. We need to broaden this safety net. The reception is limited by the number of sponsorship. What is happening right now is a veritable genocide. How do genocides work, especially 20th century genocides? You deny that there's a state, you deny there is a people, you call people subhuman, you call them Nazis. You say that actually, we never did genocide on this land, although between 1914 and 1950, 15 million Ukrainians were killed. We start moving populations, deporting 4 million white Ukrainians to Russia. There's a big demographic problem in Russia. And you send the Far East Asian Russian citizens disproportionately to fight and be killed in Ukraine. And then you just keep piling it on. There's no genocide. We just sent 100 cruise missiles into the country yesterday. There's no genocide. One thing after another confuses, and there's an overabundance of evidence. I recommend to you, look up Timothy Snyder, Ukraine and Genocide. He's got a couple excellent videos. He's the foremost expert on European mass killing in the 20th century. And he's become a very, very distinguished analyst of what is going on. I want to thank you for praying, for staying informed, advocating, and for helping. There's no clear count right now, but the aid offered by people in the pews is well over 150 million. And I want to thank you because you have led in that. I have some materials here, a history of the church, Eastern Catholic Church in Ukraine, a small political history, a report on our humanitarian fund. I invite you to pick them up. But I want to go right now at the end to one deep place, which confirms our mission. Ukraine is doing better in this war, even though it's David standing up to Goliath. Russia's military budget was 5 years ago was 20 times that of Ukraine's. How is that possible? How is it possible that in a country where 14 million people have been displaced, there's nobody on the streets? There's nobody lying on the curbs. There's no street people. I was really hit by this when I came to New York from Ukraine. I've been in Ukraine 5 times since February. Systematically, since the time of Leo XIII, especially under Metropolitan Sheptytsky, who was head of the church from 1901 to 1944, and then after liberation, for the last 35 years almost, Catholics in Ukraine have been explaining Catholic social doctrine. unalienable, God-given human dignity, solidarity, subsidiarity, and the common good. And today, President Zelensky is speaking in these terms. President Zelensky was a little bit like President Trump, making money on comedy or in showbiz. Today, he's become a follower of his people. Zelensky is canonized, and he deserves the respect he gets. But it's the Ukrainian people that have made Zelensky. And I venture to say that you have helped the Ukrainian people be who they are. American Catholics have supported the Catholic Church through thick and thin in Ukraine, in the worst of times, in the past and in the present. And you have helped through scholarships, through internships, through the training of bishops and seminarians, religious and lay people, for people to understand what Catholic social doctrine is. And it's subsidiarity in the army. It's solidarity among the refugees. It's the willingness to give your life for God-given dignity. It's the conversation of common good that has become the language of a secular president. He doesn't know that you've influenced him. And he's influencing the world back. He's bringing a language of values back to the global geopolitical discourse. In the world that is suffering 20 wars, that has untold hardship on all continents, today is being inspired because people in Ukraine are lining up to defend the innocent. People are bribing, young men are bribing the different administrative military units to get higher up in the enlistment list, while Russians are fleeing in the hundreds of thousands because their war is pointless. It all comes together. No act of good is lost. No gesture of solidarity is without fruit. So again, I thank you. Please pray. Organize prayer. This month is the month of the Holodomor genocide in Ukraine. I'll be in St. Patrick's Cathedral on Saturday. I want to encourage you to pray, and if you can, go pray in Ukraine. Cardinal Dolan was the first American bishop. He beat us Ukrainians to going to Ukraine. If you can, come. I'm going at the beginning of February. Do you want to come with me? We'll see some things. You'll be inspired. And you'll see how much you have contributed to this fortitude, to this virtue, to this belief in eternity. Because that, in the end, is what is in the hearts of people who give their lives. They give their lives because they know there's something more than just little me, than my little chronology. There's eternal life. It's Christ-like. There's no greater love than one gives one's life for one's friends. And I thank you for walking with the people of Ukraine, bringing down upon them the grace of God, and keeping this country informed about the truth, about the virtues, and about our responsibility to stay in solidarity. May the Lord reward you and all whom you represent 100-fold.
Thank you, Archbishop Gudziak.